Good morning. I'm Adam Luke, Head of Finance here at Level 39, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to our virtual event this morning, focusing on happiness and well-being in the post-COVID workplace. A special welcome to my panelists, Matt, co-founder of the Happiness Index, and Lydia, Head of People at NetGuru. Thank you all for joining us this morning. So the theme of this panel is happiness and well-being in the post-COVID workplace. We'll be discussing if tech companies are doing enough to keep employees happy and what else they might need to do to retain staff in a post-pandemic world. 2020 changed the world of work as we know it, and people were forced to leave their collaborative and social workspaces and work from home instead, many from their kitchen tables. The 19th of July has been earmarked by the government as the date for life to return to normal, also known as Freedom Day. But will employees want the way of life to return as it was? It's time to stop and pause and see what lessons can be learned from this change in the status quo. While team socials and coffee catch-ups have been missed, the last year and a half has highlighted how there are far more layers to staff happiness and well-being. It's more important than ever for companies to reevaluate and build their employee well-being offerings, as job vacancies in the tech sector are soaring, with new data from the government's Digital Economy Council revealing that hiring within the tech sector has reached a 5-year high. This means that making sure employees are content is not a goodwill gesture. It will be the difference between keeping your staff and losing them. More than ever before, companies of all shapes and sizes will need to work proactively to engage staff and make sure they feel valued and happy in what they do. This session today will present a perspective on happiness in the workplace. We'll explore how the pandemic has affected our work culture and what employees can do to improve the working life of their staff, and how candidates can spot a company that will put their well-being first. Just a reminder of the format of this session. We'll start with the panel discussion, followed by a Q&A. So please submit your questions in the Q&A box as we go along. Then ending with the opportunity to virtual network. So without further ado, I'd like to kick off the session by giving the opportunity for our panelists to introduce themselves. Welcome, Matt and Lydia.
Hello, everybody. Hi.
Morning, guys.
Hey, everyone.
Matt, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello, everyone. It's just Adam. Before I do, there's a funny story this morning on the subject that you were talking about. My son, who's 4 years old, who was on his way to nursery, because I was working from home today, he asked if he could do nursery from home.
Perfect. Let's do that.
Okay, it's a good context to some of the questions that we're going to talk about. But so I'm Matt Phelan. I'm co-founder of a business called the Happiness Index. We're an employee engagement and happiness platform. So it allows companies throughout the world, including Canary Wharf, to understand how their people think and feel. And companies use that to improve the culture. And we'll talk about it a bit later, but there's a direct link by how your people feel and the financial performance of the business. So sometimes people, when I put that into my intro, because sometimes people think happiness is the fluffy bit. I think it's one of the most serious parts of business, and we'll talk a bit through that. Over to you, Lydia.
Thanks, Matt. My name is Lydia Szutkiewicz. I'm interim head of people at NetGuru, a software consulting company, and I'm responsible for, well, put it simple words, making everybody happy at NetGuru and to creating amazing workplace and the best place in the world. So responsible for 3 areas, actually, for community and engagement at NetGuru. So making sure that everybody feels part of the company at the very beginning, for learning and development. So allowing and making sure, again, that everybody can grow, and for HR business partner area in order to support business with HR perspective. Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Lydia. So I'm going to kick things off with happiness and home working, and how this has altered people's mindsets and what companies need to do to make sure staff well-being is prioritized as the return to office starts. So just a question out to you both. Feel free to jump in. So 18 months, year and a half. people have been working from home by themselves. How has the absence of team socials and coffee catch-ups and just mingling with your colleagues impacted staff's well-being?
Do you want to go first, Lydia?
Yeah, thanks. Actually, I was wondering who's going to kick off. Well, I would say significantly. And even though the NetGuru was remote first for the very beginning, so for about 12 years actually, because it was efficient for not only co-workers, but also for the clients that value availability and flexibility. But we also do have offices, and we did treated them as a place where we can build community, when we can hang out and simply build the connections. And yes, and we lost it. And we not only lost the working environment, but also we have disconnected from our social lives. That's why, yes, answering your question, Adam, I believe that there's a significant effect on well-being, and that's why this is our responsibility as employers to support team members through different initiatives, like on live cooking sessions, or team hangouts, or organizing annual conferences which can spark the creativity and innovation. And what we have also observed, that people started to organize their time organically. So they're having a coffee breaks or lunch breaks or even yoga sessions online. And there's nothing more that we can do besides supporting and not to kill the sparks there in order to build the well-being. So yeah, that would be my answer. Thanks.
So Lydia has added the creative part. I'm just going to be the geek and just give the data. We've been collecting data in real time throughout the pandemic. It's impacted people in a very hard way. But the thing to remember is it hasn't impacted people equally. So some professions prefer working from home. Some professions prefer working from the office, but they're also generalizations. So it's different. Every person's experience is different. An interesting industry observation, because there's tech people in the audience, is that engineers generally have become happier because they don't like people like me in an open plan office coming around asking them every 10 seconds how they are and if they want to go for a coffee. So I think our learning from it, 2 bits of takeaway data from it is, first, there was what we called an emotional deficit. So because people couldn't go for coffees and so on, people wanted to communicate from home with their companies times 3 the normal, which is statistically, that's huge, right? We don't normally see something like that in a database. What that means is companies have to be more open and listening more and communicating more in a virtual world. So the first thing is the deficit. The second thing is trying to understand why, because it is different for every person. Because I think in the future, my personal model will be that I will work from home a couple of days a week and in an office 3 days a week. But that's very different to other people, what their childcare arrangements and so on and so on. So the broad level, it impacted people very negatively. There was what we call an emotional deficit, but don't forget, each individual is different. And even though there's technology companies like mine that you can use, don't forget the human thing of picking up the phone and suggesting to go for a coffee with someone now that we can. So that's a bit of a geeky update for everyone.
That's a great term, Matt. Emotional deficit. Not heard that one, but I might be stealing that from you and using it. I'm sure you'd be telling us what you'd be doing to fill that emotional deficit. But okay, so what are the positives and negatives of working from home then? And how can we keep the best of both worlds? Lydia, do you want to start?
Yes, thanks. And actually, I will agree with what Matt said when it comes to personal choice or personal preferences when it comes to working, like setup working. And if I can share my personal opinion, I value working from home because it allows me to focus when I need to do some deep work. But on the other hand, since all my team members work from different places, I still feel connected and a part of community because we basically see each other on a daily basis. But when you ask about the positives and negatives, so from my perspective, the positive thing would be environmental aspects, and maybe not that obvious, but we still spend less time on commuting, and there's a lower impact from the carbon perspective. And also, remote work doesn't only mean working from home. At NetGuru, employees can work from the various locations all over the world. And what we have even noticed that a group of friends, a group of co-workers, they decided to do the workations, so-called, together. So they go to the different locations, for example, on some island to Africa, and they like rent a flat and work there together and still hang out and have fun in the same time. When it comes to negative aspects, I feel definitely that the social connections suffer, as well as the creativity, and that might also be impacted. And on the other hand, of course, it makes team building harder. But the other scenario is that working and living in the same place can affect our work-life balance. We all know while working at home that sometimes it's super hard to finish the work. That's why I keep on repeating on the very beginning of all newbies, new joiners day, that when you finish your work, just finish your work. Don't cross the line between work and life. And don't check your Slack after hours. Don't open your laptop during the weekends. Just allow yourself to rest. And the last thing that comes to my mind is like the feeling of privacy intrusion. So even right now, you can see my background, you can see my flat, which is super okay from my side, but it might be not that comfortable for some people. But luckily, we do have some background changes possibilities in the tools that we are using, and this is still super comfortable. I mean, it builds the feeling of comfortable, hopefully for others. So yeah.
Great, thanks, guys. So Matt, you talked a bit about your software, but how can the software play a role in improving employee well-being when they work remotely and even as they start to return to the office? How does the software play a part of that?
I think the thing to remember here, and I'm going to pick on an old saying, which is, if you can measure it, you can manage it. I think that saying was one of the worst things that ever happened to the world of work, because that saying, it comes from like the factory floor where you think of people as robots. Where I think software can come in, I would change it to, if you can measure it, you can understand it. So don't try and measure stuff. Like you see all these things where companies try and put like Big Brother stuff in, like how long someone's been at their screen and all this kind of stuff. Like if you're measure to understand so you can help improve the company. If you are measuring to manage or control, you've got the whole thing mixed up. You need to be focused on your vision first and your values that underpin that and your business strategy. So I think what software can do, like the Happiness Index, it can help you understand. And the more you understand as a leader, it means you make better decisions. So I would go back in time and I would try and change if you can measure it to you can manage it, to if you can measure it, you can understand it, would be my advice, Adam.
Great, thanks for that insight. I'm sure I'll probe you some more data points or what you have. So Lydia, you talked about your background and how it makes some people comfortable and some people uncomfortable. When people are virtual, it's harder to, it's easier to mask how you're feeling, right? Because you don't get that, you don't get that in-person vibe in that sense. So how can employers create a culture of well-being, open and transparent way, and make people feel comfortable? With younger generation just starting out in their professional life, they've probably never set foot in the office, let alone their employees. But how can you create a culture with this without struggling, without being judged, or all these things that come to mind that you wouldn't, well, you probably would in person, but I'm guessing, does it impact it virtually?
Yes, it is. And I like to believe that the culture shapes an organization, not the other way around. But obviously, we need to add some magic to this one and support it. And when it comes to shaping the culture, it's the constant work, and we keep on trying to shape it in a way that we like it to be from the very beginning. And I use the words trying because it's a constant process, not the one task job. And at NetGuru, we we do that, we care about the culture from the very beginning, and actually from the moment when a candidate accepts the offer. This is the moment when we share additional information, when we send the culture book in order to share our values and the way how we work. Later during the onboarding day, I personally talk about the culture and communication aspects of NetGuru. And we talk not only about the fluffy and nice stuff, about the way how we work and how we hang out, what the perks are, but also the things that are hard and they're like super hard to identify. For example, like I don't know, like burnout, like any kind of struggles with emotions, any kind of, I don't know, being disconnected from the company. And it's my responsibility to make sure that everybody knows where to look for help. And also, one of the aspects of the culture is transparency. If we are transparent from the very beginning, if we as employers, as C-levels even, like talk about the struggles, talk about the challenges that we are having, it builds the openness of the organization, and it allows everybody to talk openly about it. And you also mentioned, Adam, about the differences between virtual life and an off-site reality. And I would say that it doesn't really differ that much, because sometimes it's even hard to realize what somebody is feeling offsite. And it's not because we don't know how to do it, because in most cases we do. It's because we don't want to take responsibility. And in that case, no matter in what set we are working at, it's our responsibility to make sure that we know what's going on in the organization. We shouldn't make any assumptions. We simply should talk to employees, to ask how they are feeling, to listen to them, and then conduct some actions and, to fulfill the promises that we are having. And simply do it step by step on every level and care about each other. And this is not easy, but it should be done by everybody, by all employees and employers as well.
Great, thanks, Lydia. Matt, is there any further insights you would like to add from your perspective?
I'd like to just build on Lydia's point around emotions. So emotions have weirdly been classified as professional or unprofessional. So I am someone who is, when I was an employee, was described as too emotional. From a neuroscience perspective, there's no such thing as being too emotional. It's not a thing. It's like saying a parent loves their child too much. Like, it doesn't exist. Saying someone is too emotional is either depowering someone or they're confusing the behavior with the emotion. So obviously, if someone upsets you, that is an emotion that you can use to understand more. If you punch them in the face, that's against the law, right? But that is different to the emotional that someone's experiencing. And the reason I bring this point up is that emotions have been shown that the emotional state of a company is a very good indicator of the future financial performance of the company. So the reason I'm bringing this point up is that once people start measuring employee engagement and employee happiness like they do, like Canary Wharf do as one of our customers, what you start to realize is today's emotions are tomorrow's financial performance. But what we do as human beings, when we see numbers and metrics, we love to make them a target. That's what we do. We want them to go up. It's natural. This is what we want, right? But it is as abnormal to be happy all the time as it is to be unhappy all the time. It's important for emotions to fluctuate. And the reason I bring this up on a metrics point is that emotions are the thing that I want to leave in people's head is that when you look at a normal P&L, revenue going up is generally good. Revenue going down is generally bad. Okay, and you can kind of make that assumption. When you read emotional data, it's more like a weather report. So I grew up on a farm, right? And I still find it weird because now, anywhere in England, anytime it rains, people go, "Oh, God, it's raining, it's terrible." Well, if you're a farmer, when it rains, it's good news. So what I would say is that emotions are like a weather report, not a financial report. So you need them to understand, but you don't make them a target and worry about whether they're going up or down. It's normal for them to fluctuate. If you're in Denmark this morning, it's normal for you to be disappointed that your football team lost yesterday. Okay. And then the reason I make this point is because we're all business people tend to be focused on targets. But if you make emotions targets, what you do is you actually do the opposite. So if you see someone's unhappy in the office and you walk up to them and tell them to cheer up, I can guarantee you their mood is only going to go one way. It's going to go down. So just to summarize that, on Lydia's point, emotions are tomorrow's financial performance, but don't make the emotions targets based on them moving up. Just understand they fluctuate. And just like if you know it's going to be rainy, you bring an umbrella. If you know that everyone's stressed, then you might need to be looking at how you can help with burnout. So a long answer, but I want to link into Lydia's point on emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thanks, Matt. That's great insight. So we'll move on to the tech sector as a whole now and the happiness there. There's been a recent report from the government that the tech sector is booming, and this is due to tech providing many solutions to the problem that the pandemic has created. So there's been an opportunity and more tech are hiring. So in effect, it's made it more important for companies to keep their employees engaged and motivated, as there's more now opportunities to jump ship. So what I'm seeing is that how are the companies now prioritizing staff well-being, and how are they attracting new talent? Lydia, I'll start with you on that one, and if you could share any insights.
Mm-hmm. And I would say that current and past employees are the best reference point, and we should always trust what they are saying, because we simply don't force them to do so. And one of the measures, Matt talked a lot about how to measure things, and we actually measure how likely employees would like to recommend NetGuru as a place of work to their friends and colleagues. So as you probably know, we use NPS for that, and I'm very happy to see that in last quarter's survey, we more than 300 people out of 500 gave us 9 or 10 on the 1 to 10 scale, and this is the best reference point, and this is the way how we are showing to the world that we actually care about well-being and happiness. But this is going internally, and we can only show the KPIs outside, or simply encourage our current employees to talk about it. But again, this is not something that we can force them to do. We can just encourage, because this is important for everybody, and it's always nice to work with people that you know and you're friends with. But of course, the other things are job offers, obviously, and the whole recruitment process that we are conducting, and all the marketing collaterals like culture books, job offers, advertisements, case studies, articles in the media. And of course, and I'm also very happy to and proud of it, we have been awarded as a great place to work. And so we received a certificate. And this is also one of the things that are shown outside of the company and that we are very proud of, and actually it proves that we are the best place to work and that we care for the well-being of our staff.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Lydia. And Matt, from your perspective, how's the happiness index showcasing to prospective employees how they can prioritize staff well-being and happiness?
So this is the conversation I have every day, Adam, at the moment, because this is happening. I would invoke Chris Rock. Chris Rock used to do a sketch about how about infidelity in men, and he used to say men are as faithful as their opportunities. If you actually look at the data behind that, that's not true. It tends to be people have affairs that are not happy in their relationships, and that's why you suddenly see on paper, you think, why has that person had an affair? They've got everything in their life. And I'm going to make the link now into the employee world for you, which is there are employees in the tech industry will stay in companies for long periods of time if they're given all the things that they need to be happy in their workplace. And part of the problem is people confuse engagement with happiness. And I'm just going to break it out for everyone quickly, which is engagement effectively is what the brain needs. It's things like clarity so that you can do your role. It's all the tools. Happiness is what the heart needs. It's like opportunities to grow. Are you appreciated at work? By lumping all of that into engagement, you miss happiness. So the reason that's important, and we measure both in the platform, is most of my phone calls most of our inbound leads don't come from people who say they want to make their employees happy. Unfortunately, I wish that was true. If anyone is on here and they want to make their employees happy, call me, but that never happens. People generally call me with a problem. And the problem people are calling at the moment is they're saying their engagement metrics are really high. People have never been so engaged. And then there's a but people are unhappy. There's mental health issues, there's well-being issues, there's burnout, and so on and so on. And what the data shows is that companies are very rational. And again, it goes back to that point. Emotions have been banned from the workforce because people see the workforce like a factory. But by bringing emotions like happiness back in, you can actually change those numbers. And we see that across our client base. And it's because all the things that you need to do are free. Like, one of the most important things to retain your employees is appreciation. It doesn't cost anything you don't have to have like a snooker table in your office to appreciate your employees and to say, there's a bit in the data, a heartfelt thank you, like actually saying to your employees, thank you. Like, you can send them a £10 voucher, which is good for other reasons. But all the stuff that makes people happy doesn't cost any money, because guess what? We're human beings all at the core.
Thanks, Matt. That's a great point to add. So I'm going to flip it around now. So I started with what the company could showcase to attract the employee. So Lydia, I'm looking at you. What type of questions should a candidate ask about employee well-being when they're in a job interview?
Mm-hmm. Well, from my perspective, candidates should start with themselves. So they need to answer themselves a question, what the well-being means to them. And if they have an answer, they need to find out if the employee is offering the same thing. So if the expectation meets the reality. And simply, you should ask about it and ask, okay, what the well-being means for the employer, for the company that they're applying for, and how they ensure it, what they actually do in order to make to retain the well-being and happiness of employees. As well, what should be asked from my perspective is about, when it comes to well-being, what are the benefits that the employer is providing? Is there remote work possible? And even not remote, is there any hybrid work possible? Do employer provide any tools, like a chair or a desk or anything, any kind of the setup that might be useful on the daily basic? And especially from the different perspective, somebody is not comfortable working from home because still there are some people, they simply don't have enough space, they don't feel comfortable. They should be provided with co-working space or with any other place where they can work and focus on their responsibilities. So to sum it up, what does employee well-being means for the employee and for the employers, and how they ensure it, what they actually do, what kind of activities, what kind of the things they have done. Also, it's good to conduct the research before. Maybe there's something in social media, for example, that employer is shown. If they do, it's a good sign. If they don't, maybe that's the area what should be investigated even further. And about the perks and benefits that are connected to well-being, it's also useful to find what are they, if they are not included in the job advertisement.
Great, thanks. I think due to the pandemic, it's accelerated home working and remote working. So expectations has changed, because I think even for me, it's not a question I would be thinking to ask as if I was a candidate. What's my well-being options? And I think there's a expectation shift at the moment of what is a statutory legal requirement versus what is expectation. So I'm just leading on to the next one. It's kind of a blur now, because the expectations are changed. Are you expected to have this perks or that perk, and the grey area is what is legal. So we see things like 25-day annual leave listed as a company perks, right? And it's just a legal requirement effectively, because I think a lot of people are not aware that that 25-day can include the 8-day bank holiday as well. Some companies put it on top of it, and it's kind of, if you're new to recruitment, or you're a new candidate, these things may seem like, oh, it's great, but it's not it's your legal requirement. I'm gonna open the question now, probably Matt to start with. What are genuine perks that you see and benefits a company can provide, and that make it more appealing to them?
So it's so interesting, Adam. It's such an interesting question. And I think what we are seeing, what they should be the tiny little things on top that are an extra. They shouldn't be like the core. But what we are seeing, and this is just why I just love the new generation, is that culture is so important to them. Going back to the previous question, but into that stuff. Like I used to work in media, and I used to get to go to all the Michelin star restaurants in the world, and I learned really quickly that it's better to go to Wetherspoons with a decent person than it is to go to a Michelin star restaurant with a complete idiot. And what I mean by that, and I do think we need to learn from the next generation. That's what they're looking at. They're looking at the culture, and then it comes out in their questions. Like I interviewed someone yesterday. I was so impressed. They said to me, they tricked me with a question. They said, "What's the gender split of your investors?" And I said, "We're quite proud of this. It's 50-50 because it's hard to get female investors into a business, which I know, but we've worked really hard on that." And then she said back to me, "Do you know that you've just said a microaggression to me, Matt?" And I didn't even know what a microaggression was. And I said, "Can you explain what you mean?" And this person said to me, "Well, I'm non-binary. So when you say that your investors are 50-50 split, you've offended me." Now, it wasn't like a woke conversation where people say like, "Oh, someone was just offended for the sake of it." She was trying to educate me that actually classifying our investors as male and female is important. Her understanding that was important to understand how I would react to the question. So what I'm saying on the perks thing is perks are great, but the next generation, the talented people, they are gonna dive deep into your soul, and you need to be thinking about these things. And also, it's so important that you're in a good state yourself, so that you're not defensive. And you need to be. And I needed to learn from that conversation. I haven't been able to stop thinking about that conversation since it happened. And I'm even telling you now because I'm thinking, right, I need to work out how I report on this stuff, because the vision of the happiness index is freedom to be human. It's not freedom to be man, freedom to be woman, freedom to be male, freedom to be female. It's freedom to be human. So I set out to make everyone feel good at work, but as that person described to me, I'd accidentally done a microaggression. So I think everything has to start at culture, and all the stuff, all the perk stuff, the stuff that you can feed on top. But unless you know what culture you want to stand for, don't even get to the perks bit.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really a key message, Matt. Culture is important, but also you can't forget about diversity and inclusion, and what your company stands for here. I think we talked about it, in the preacher about some comments a tennis commentator made, and it's just these things that you need to be aware of, and new generation, like you mentioned, Matt, there's a lot more data available for these guys, and they're a lot aware more. So there's some tangible benefits, but there's also the intangibles, what you mentioned, just about being yourself. That's really important. Is there anything else you would like to add and what you see from your perspective, Lydia?
Well, I'm very interested in what you said, Matt, and it brought me a conclusion that it's hard to keep up, and we need to do that day by day in order to educate ourselves and in order to build an amazing workplace. But when it comes to perks, Adam, and benefits, so I was making an inside joke that we have 26 days in Poland. So and agree that this should be a standard, and it should be considered as a perk. What should be considered as a perk is everything on top of what is above the standards. And we decided 1 year ago to shift into the flexibility area, and we decided to open a benefit platform in order for employees to choose from whatever they want. So whether they want to choose the healthcare or the sport car, or they want to buy some spa session, this is still okay for them within the platform. And also the platforms allows us to conduct any kind of gamification or challenges, that this is still a part of community building activities. And on top of that, we are also offering sabbatical leaves for people who has anniversaries. So the longer they work, the more sabbatical leave they can get. And this is still connected with the well-being and the health of the employees, because we see that in order to catch up, as Matt said, culture is critical, but still the sense of belonging and like having the ability to reset our minds and emotions is still crucial. So yeah, we are trying to keep up on this one as well.
I just want to review what Lydia just said. And so Lydia's got it the right way around. Like, from everything that we've heard her say, they're focused on making it a great place to work. They're now at that point where they can put in a benefits platform. Some companies do it the other way around. And I'll just get you to imagine this scenario. You're being bullied at work by your manager, and then you get offered a free coffee.
Ugh.
Like that's or a free bike or whatever. That's what happens all the time. And that's why it's just, Lydia's done it the right way. You start with the culture piece, and then you get to the benefits. And it's even worse. It's like that cheer up example. If you put the benefits in before you got the culture right, it's an insult. If you're being bullied and then you get offered someone, because it feels like a bribe. It feels like, oh, okay, you can treat me badly, but you're paying me off here. And that's, I just wanted to sort of review what Lydia is talking about.
Yeah, it's like neglecting the problems, and they will never disappear if they are doing that. So you should focus on solving them instead of, covering them with some treats. And this is horrible. Yeah, agree, Matt, totally.
It's like not speaking to your partner for a year, and then on Valentine's you get them some flowers. It's like it's just not going to work, is it?
Yeah, because we want to say to each other that we love each other just only once a year. Yeah.
Exactly. And Valentine's can be good if you're doing the other stuff the other time of the year. But if you're only doing it then, that's when you're in trouble.
Yeah. I agree.
It's got to be balanced and available all the time. It's not something that it's a given. I think from my personal perspective, I'm going to go back to my point where there's some legislation that I'm not aware of, and are they a perk, are they not a perk? And I became a first-time dad during the pandemic.
Congratulations, Adam.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that was experience. And the company, when I talk to them, and this is one of the points that, if you're a large corporation, you have that support. Well, you have more access to the support and people to talk to, and what's out there and what's available to you. So in my instance, I found out there was a shared parental leave, and it's not something I've even heard of. And that was great. At that time for me, it was a welcome. Did I see it as a perk, or did I see it as a statutory legal requirement? I saw more, this is great, companies offer it, but is it equal, through industry? I mean, I'm not even going to touch about, what location you're working on and the jurisdictions of each legal requirement which you need to follow. But in the UK, I think there's a statute of, and then the company can put towards what policy they want. Where I know in Sweden, and in Denmark, there's a reason why those countries. I'm sure you read these reports, guys, that they're the happiest in the world. Like Denmark, they've got these small things, and I found that very really helpful at a time for me. So just to add on to the points, it doesn't have to be like free coffee or free this or a sports day. It's just being aware of things that are available to you. I think that was really important. And that really improved my morale. I was like itching to come back and doing it. And I'm just going to end on this point in the tech. I'm going to end with a tech question. So Matt, is data helping give tech companies insight into what they need to do to improve staff morale?
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. It's what our clients do every single day. I would say what it gives, if I had to summarize what it gives, is it gives a company emotional intelligence. When you're a company of less than 100 people, there's the Dunbar number. So companies less than 100 people, it's easy to keep the relationship strong. Once you get above 100, it's hard to understand how people feel. Everyone doesn't know each other's names and so on and so on. So just being able to log in and just see how your people feel all around the world gives you emotional intelligence. Because if you're the CEO, most of our clients read their data daily and feedback on it weekly. But if you're the CEO of the business, if you're a CEO of a one office building, you can read the room, right? But if your people are all around the world, or they're all working from home and so on, it's very difficult to read the room. So then when you stand up at the town hall, you need to be able to understand how people are feeling before you say your comms. And I'll give you another example of like what I was saying about the happy thing. I'll give you a bit of data. When someone's getting really angry and someone tells them to calm down. Never in the history of telling someone to calm down has anyone calmed down. That's just a piece of data, 100% fact. I've never verified it, but I'm pretty sure it to be true. That's what happens when a CEO stands up and they haven't read the room and they don't know what's going on in the company. Because a tendency of a CEO is to speak rationally. But if people are in an emotional state, what you need to do is lead with more stories, as an example. If people are in a rational state, you can go more into the numbers and so on. So people are using our technology to understand how engaged and happy people are, and the themes behind it, why they're not, why they are. Are they scared? Are people in London scared of getting on the tube that weren't before? If that is the case, what can you do about it? And my final point on it, Adam, just to summarize that, is that when people get this data back, there can be a lot of negative stuff in there. So leadership fear that stuff. And what I've learned from doing this with multiple companies is that your employees can handle the truth, but they can't handle you not communicating with them, going back to the emotional deficit bit. So if you've got something that's making people unhappy that you can't fix, you as a CEO, you will be respected for that. Like, as a CEO, you haven't been able to lift lockdown, but that only Boris Johnson can do that. So if you look into your data and it says, I'm unhappy because of lockdown, what you can do is acknowledge that. You can't do anything about it, but what leaders tend to do is think, if I can't fix it, I won't say anything about it. I'll pretend it's not happening. So in summary, I would say it's emotional intelligence at scale is what data on this stuff gives you.
Great, thanks, guys. So I'm going to bring this session into the final phase, and we're going to look to the future of work. So I might ask you to get your crystal balls out, in this one. As we navigate post-pandemic landscape, both employers and employees in a place to mold what everyone wants out of their working lives. And it's increasingly important for employees to make the workplace more centric. So first question is, the pandemic has changed the world of work. Has this changed people's mindset about going into the office? I know we touched a bit about this, but I think we can explore about what is the expectation of the future and what you see it being.
And I guess that's hard to answer, because as Matt mentioned, this is the matter of individual and how they perceive what their needs are. And like, from my perspective, and this is still a generalization, and this is something what I imagine, that to answer your question, Adam, yes, it has changed people's mindset. It has changed my mindset. So I can speak for myself, because I realized that I don't necessarily need to go to the office. I don't necessarily need to hang out during the coffee, because I can do it remotely. My expectations towards my working environment changed, and I've created myself a set at home that allows me to work comfortably. But when it comes to expectations and what I imagine people might expect in the future is the flexibility of giving them a choice how they want to work. So the hybrid remote work set will be, from my perspective, a standard in the future. But the crucial challenge might be to follow, as I mentioned earlier, to follow employees' needs and to find out and gather the data, and as Matt and also noticed, to acknowledge the data, what employees' needs are, and And this is crucial from my perspective in order to face the challenges of the future.
Yeah, it's a good point, Lydia, and you refer to it again as that different people has different needs and requirements. I guess for me is in terms of the mindset, it has shifted the needle, but has it removed the stigma of remote working? What would you say, Matt?
I think that I'll just lean on a bit of neuroscience for this, which is, so all of us are different to who we were yesterday. So Adam, Lydia, myself, we're different people to who we were yesterday. Experiences since then, but not much different. We're a little bit different. The pandemic was such a big event. Every single person has changed fundamentally from that. Okay. What I think we need to think of as employers, we need to have more of a customer mindset when it comes to employees, because some of the statements that have gone out from some CEOs, from Lord Sugar through to Morgan Stanley, sorry if you work at these companies, are so out of tune with what employees want that they're coming from a period of time where they had absolute power over employees. What's changed, and going in, but to answer your question about the future, Adam, what's changed is social media and technology. There's people on this call that are listening. We've changed the world through technology, right? And what that means is it's much easier to move if you're unhappy. So I think what I would encourage is people to think of attracting employees and retaining employees in a competitive landscape, just like they do trying to attract customers. Because once you start looking at it like that, it totally changes your mindset. Whereas some of those statements from these CEOs, they just come from a different world where we saw it with Brewdog only 2 weeks ago, where 60 ex-staff wrote a letter about the culture at Brewdog. That's going to happen more and more if you have one thing internally and one thing externally. So it's a bit a roundabout answer to your question, Adam. But I think trying to get a competitive mindset on the employee workforce is really key for some of these people, because if you are not attracting the best people, that is going to hurt your business, and the best people will have the most amount to choose from, and they will pick the companies that are focusing on culture and flexibility and so on and so on.
Great, thanks, Matt. So I'd like to bring this discussion to wrap it up now, and I'm going to go for some questions from the Q&A. So the first one is, onto my point about crystal ball is, the audience would like to know, in a few sentences from you both, we'll start with Lydia this time, summarize what you think the happiness and well-being industry this time.
Well, I have no idea, frankly speaking, because 10 years is a huge amount of time, and like everything changed so dynamically. But from my perspective, there may be two things that should be crucial. The first thing is flexibility, but not only in terms of how we work, but in terms of how we are giving each other choice, what we want, on what perks and benefits, as we mentioned, should be offered, how many days off should be offered for the employees. So all kind of flexibly adjusting, being agile to what we are doing and what we are offering within the industry or within the working environment. And the second one, from my perspective, will be sustainability. To remain a healthy balance, not only again within the industry, but within everyday thinking and action. And I have mentioned that before, so I'll repeat myself, sorry about that. But yeah, we are operating in like super dynamic environment. So the reality might be totally different 1 year in the future, from 1 year from now, not mentioning the 10 years from now. But again, like the biggest challenge for us will be to keep up and not to give up while keeping up, and we all should stay strong in order to again build amazing workplace for everybody and for each other as well.
Thanks, Lydia. Matt, any thoughts or anything from your crystal ball?
Well, I'm processing because I'm learning so much from Lydia. I feel like I should have paid to join this session. I'm learning so much from Lydia. I suppose what should happen versus what will happen. What should happen is the industry shouldn't exist. It shouldn't be needed. Companies like me shouldn't be needed. as in this is about, all of this stuff is about understanding human behavior and treating people well. If you treat people well, they'll perform better at work, right? So it shouldn't, the goal of the whole industry should be so successful that the industry disappears. So that's not going to happen. So what can happen? I think that I would use maps as an example. I'm a bit of a geek on maps as well. If you go back 150 years ago and you think of maps, those black and white maps that are like 2D where you look across the world. If you think now, if you're traveling somewhere and you pull up Google Maps, it gives you a complete 3D view of everything, that allows you to like just find out even how long it's going to take you to get there. So I would say, hopefully, we're in a 2D world at the moment in terms of well-being, where we've got a slowly getting more an understanding of what's happening. And I hope we move to a more 3D world where we're not reliant on technology, but I hope the happiness index is part of helping human beings be more human. And that's something I'm very passionate about. And I hope that's what it looks like in 10 years' time.
So happiness is flat at the moment, and in 10 years' time, so we're going to unpeel the layers.
Yeah, just like Pixar did. But for the well-being industry.
That's a great one. Okay, so this was a big one from the audience. What are your thoughts on the importance of equity, diversion, and inclusion aligned with workplace well-being? I know we touched slightly on this, but I'm going to give you guys over to you. Lydia?
Well, huge. So if the answer is how important it's going to be, I would say, yeah, I can't even imagine how will that be, but it's super important. Because if you are not going to focus on those aspects and we're not going to cover them and making sure that equity and diversity and inclusion, treating everybody equally, regardless of backgrounds, regardless our behaviors or countries that we are working on, especially in a remote environment that we are hiring foreigners more and more and more. So we need to learn how to treat everybody equally. We need to focus on our eternal, I would say, learning and development on how the culture is different and how we should behave towards each other. So the area is huge, and we are right now focusing on. We only hired few foreigners, and I will only focus on this aspect. Sorry for that, but we still see that this is a challenge for us. So we are educating ourselves how to, treat each other equally within that kind of environment. So, yeah, it's a huge topic. So I can't really tell anything else on this one, but yeah, again, very, very significant, I would say.
I'm going to go to a piece of data, Adam, that I think should be taught in schools. It's by Professor Jeremy Dawson. If whoever asked that question, if you go to the Happiness in Humans podcast, you'll see me interviewing Professor Jeremy Dawson. Long story short of the study, it's the biggest study ever in the world because it uses all NHS staff. Long story short, if you went into two hospitals, one had happier staff and one had unhappier staff. The one with unhappier staff, you're more likely to die. Impacts death rate. Also impacts infection rates. I asked Professor Jeremy Dawson, what was your biggest surprise in the data? Discrimination and racism impact happiness. Happiness impacts death rate. So just to make sure that everyone knows how serious this is, discrimination in hospitals impacts death rate. That everyone needs to know that. It needs to be taught in schools. And then there's a wider philosophical conversation here about how you should treat everyone equal as human beings and equity and so on and so on. But I'd recommend everyone check it. So that podcast is Happiness in Humans. Check out me interviewing Professor Jeremy Dawson. Everyone in the UK and every country should know about that research, because when you see this stuff linked to normal work, it's bad. When you see it linked to death rate, it goes top of mind and you'll never forget it. So please check that study out.
Mm-hmm. And Matt, I'm sure you're going to be happy about what I said, and start with the data. So find what is going on within your company, because I see another question, how it should be approached. And again, start to find out what is the situation right now at your company and your environment. And if you know the data, again, acknowledge I learned math today. Thank you. and then find out what your next steps should be, and start with the small steps, even improving small aspects, but just keep on working on that, and set some small KPIs in order to improve the areas that you struggle the most with.
And on the data point, so we measure equality and equity in our platform. On the data point, so D&I hasn't moved in the UK for over 10 years. The numbers have not moved. That's the stark reality of what we're facing here. If you look at the government report, which I think was an absolute disgrace, it wouldn't have even got out of my team. Like a junior wouldn't have been allowed to sign that report off. If you look at why people are so annoyed about the diversity report by the government, is I've interviewed people on this, and what they say is it doesn't reflect what they've experienced, so their actual world of how they feel. So when you're collecting data on this, try and understand how people feel, because it's easy to count people. And that's, again, going back to my example about binary. Someone watching this could say, on this call now, males, one female, which may be right, it may be wrong, but collect the D&I data, but you need to move to the belonging data as well. Like, how do people feel? Because there's lots of companies that fix diversity and inclusion, but they don't fix belonging, and that comes from feeling. And we could obviously help with that if people need it, but again, it starts with wanting to do all this stuff.
Thanks, guys. It's a whole session in itself, that question, I think. And thanks for attempting to answer that. Another question is, how obsolete will offices become? And will third places and alternative spaces be able to help address well-being issues and more? The audience asks.
Yeah, you never know. I talked about the hybrid of work, and I strongly believe in that. So giving the flexibility of working from home or remotely from different place, depending on your needs, and office. And I still believe that we should keep offices, because again, some people don't have conditions, like comfortable places to work at home, and the environment doesn't allow them to focus on work. So, but if you ask about the third places, so I was thinking, and actually this is the discussion that we're having right now at NetGuru, that maybe we should switch the huge office spaces to the small ones in the different cities, for example, because we still are gathering the data, because while working remotely, we are never sure when somebody will be, but maybe we should open or cooperate with co-working spaces, and then just allowing employees to visit them, to work if they need a place to work. Well, it's hard to say, actually, and this is a struggle. We got 7 offices right now in Poland, and we're actually thinking of what kind of decision to make. We want to keep them for now and encourage employees to visit them from time to time, and they do. But still, we need to answer ourselves a question if this is the business model, again, that we're going to keep, and if it's going to be affordable for us to keep the offices if there are not so many employees visiting them. So that's why we need to find another solution. But my personal opinion is that we should keep the offices, but maybe the model of it should be a bit different, especially if we're going to treat offices as a place to build community, or on the other hand, a place where you have to do the deep work or work creatively with other team members if you decide to meet with them once in a month or a few times in a month. So this is still an open topic for us. So I'm sorry if I can't answer properly, maybe, but it's a hard one.
It's something that sits at the heart of Canary Wharf and Level 39 at the moment. It's on our minds. Matt, any insights that you would like to share?
Well, look, Homo sapiens has been around for 200,000 years. What hasn't changed is our need to Lydia's word, community. We need to sit round. We need a place to sit round the fire. We need that in our personal lives. We need that in our work lives. What the office looks like needs to change, right? Just like it used to be banks of typewriters, then it was people sitting at laptops. The place needs to change and evolve. But the human instinct to come together and collaborate is never going to go away. Evolution doesn't work that quickly. So I think offices have to change, and if they don't, they will struggle and they will become relics, as in if you had an office that just had all the ink for your typewriters, or I don't even know what you would need for a typewriter, that would have gone out. But what is not going to go away is the number one thing that makes human beings happy is relationships, and relationships need a place. So I think they will evolve. And the thing that I get in people's head is to think of, the program Friends, Central Perk, like the coffee shop. I'm not saying that an office has to become a coffee shop, but there has to be a way that people can come together and collaborate, and that needs thinking in your own businesses. So I don't think Canary Wharf will disappear, but it has to adapt, or it will become part of the past. And they're a client of mine, so I would say that to them, or not, but it has to adapt and be more human.
I was just wondering when you made that point, to turn it into a coffee shop. I mean, have you been to Level 39, Matt?
I've not.
You should come and check out our coffee shop.
Yeah, I'd love to come. I'd love to come. I live in London, so it's easy for me.
Yeah, but the Central Park office sounds amazing. So I would love to have that.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys are around, I'm happy to go grab your coffee in person. Next time.
I'm always up for that.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we just reached the hour mark. So I'll wrap this up now. So thank you both, Matt, Lydia, for joining this morning and shedding a lot of colour and insight into this very important topic at this moment. And we hope the audience have enjoyed the session. As a reminder, there's a opportunity to do virtual networking with each other and the panelists once we close. So please stick around, meet each other, the speakers, and ask more questions. I can see in the chat there's a lot of engagement there. I don't know if you guys can see the chat at all, but yeah, there's a lot of engagement. So, if you guys have a few moments to spare, stick around and talk to the guys, because it's the chat's been very, very active today. So with that, have a great day, everybody. Thanks, Matt and Lydia, again, and we'll see you in the virtual networking. See you later.
Thanks, Alan.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.